Nick Pollock here from Pitcher List. Joining me here, of course, today is Aaron Civale of the Tampa Bay Rays. Aaron, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
So what we're doing today is we're going to be watching one of Aaron Civale's starts this year against the Colorado Rockies. And Aaron is super kind to sit down and really talk to us pitch by pitch. If you guys didn't see the Pablo Lopez interview last week, go check that out on our channel, of course, at Pitcher List. But before we get going, I want to talk to Aaron a little bit about just, what you do on the mound, your approach, everything like that. And the first thing I'm just curious about, tell everybody what you have as your general approach against right-handers and what you try and do against left-handers.
Sure. I think me personally, just as a guy who throws 5, 6 pitches, hopefully on any given day. Sometimes you don't have all those pitches, so you have to make adjustments. But the thing that serves me best is just unpredictability, trying to be as um, accurately random as I can. Not so random that I'm just up there flipping a coin, but knowing what pitches play with each other and making sure nobody can just sit on one pitch in a given count, making sure there's my job is to make them uncomfortable when they're in the box, regardless of left or right. Um, I think the day by day can kind of dictate what the sequencing is or what pitch is working that day and how I'm going to attack certain guys. Sometimes the numbers will tell you something, and you can either exploit those or you can. Guys know what they're doing as well, so they could be working on things, and it might be different that game, and it's just how quick you can make an adjustment, and that's the game of baseball. That's why it's so fun. What has happened in the past could continue to happen, or they can make an adjustment that you don't really know about, and then you have to pick up on that.
Absolutely. And I mean, your major repertoire, I mean, you have a kitchen sink approach, of course. But your major two pitches are cutter and curveball. You also do have a sinker that you like to go, correct me if I'm wrong, front door to front hip really to left-handers, upstairs more so actually than a normal sinker. And then also the four seamer upstairs as well. Then there's also slider in there a bit. I think a splitter too that you've added and messed around with. I
Yeah,
Do you
it used to
mind sharing
be
a little bit about how those came to be and showing us a few of those grips?
sure. So yeah, the main two pitches, like you said, cutter curveball. I think those are the pitches that make me and unique, and something that not too many guys have a pairing of is that cutter curveball, especially at the top of the zone. Like you mentioned, I'm at the top of the zone. I think it's probably top 5 percentile. I don't know exactly what it is now, but I know at one
Something
point
like that.
it was up there in terms of average pitch height. Um, but yeah, that's paired with a two seam, which, like you said, sometimes is front door to lefties, but most of the time is top of the zone, whether it's getting in on somebody's hands as a righty or a way to try and force a rollover or just uh, whatever it may be to set up a different pitch, however it is. Four seam is something that's kind of been a new addition to my repertoire the last couple of years, figuring out how it plays in, maybe getting somebody off a cutter, maybe getting somebody off a curveball, off a two seam, whatever it may be, setting something up. But
Mhm.
it's still trying to figure out the place that it fits
Well, what
within
was
my
so
repertoire.
interesting, yeah, is beforehand, we were talking, and you're saying that your cutter you just have as a four-seam grip. It just has a natural cut based on how your arm works, and what's so cool to hear is that you really worked on changing how you threw your four-seamer so you can actually strain that out, and now it
Sure.
has some of the best induced vertical break in the majors, which now makes me think, oh man, I can't wait to see you have a full season actually utilizing a four seamer and two strike counts to put guys away upstairs.
Sure. Yeah, we'll see where it keeps going, but I'll run through some of the grips right now. Got a baseball
Yeah.
here, so I don't know if this is backwards or however it is, but the seams create two different C's. One is this way, one is that way. So my four seam is on, to me, a regular C. I don't know if that's showing up as a regular C or the opposite, but just the different height of the laces with how my fingers are. This creates a more square release on the ball. for this way, and I used to throw my cutter like this, and I ended up switching them, which
Hmm.
allowed me just some more comfortability on the ball, and
Well,
just felt
that's
it
actually
felt
makes a
more
lot of sense
square
to
coming
me.
off.
Right, so
So
this
then
is
when I
your cutter has it so that your middle finger is falling off away from a seam, right? There's no seam on the right side,
correct,
which makes sense because traditionally why you don't do that, you have the seam on the right side of your middle finger, is as you release, you can slide off essentially, and the seam stops you. But if you
interesting.
have the full C there and you have the opening on the right, that makes sense. It's easier for you to fall off of it on the side, and then you have of course, the cut action on it.
Yeah, I see it as lower on this side, a little higher there.
Hmm.
These
Yeah.
2 fingers are different heights, so this, for me, squares it up a little better. On the opposite side, this is my cutter grip. This is lower, this is higher, so it creates a little bit natural where I'm on the outside of the ball a little bit, and I can come through and cut it a little bit easier. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, that's a change. I used to have it backwards, and I always fought the cut on the four seam, and I
Mhm.
had to create the cut on the cutter, and I switched them, and it's been much more just grip and throw and focus on the location that I'm throwing it to.
Oh, that's the dream, always grip and throw.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And with your curve, I mean, that's also also gets me really excited about that fastball having that much rise to it, is that you have one of the biggest drops on a curveball too. And, I call it the Blake Snell blueprint, which is stuff that's high, your hard stuff high, and then your slow stuff low, which is obvious to everybody now, but it's back in the day when Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow were trying to do it. They had to fight for it. And that curveball, that is a knuckle curve, correct?
It's a soft spike.
Okay.
So actually, my uncle, when I was like 11 or 12, maybe even 10, but showed me a knuckle curve where my finger was actually on the ball like this.
Oh,
He's like,
wow.
just throw it behind the ball and it'll spin off this way.
Mhm.
Um, I have him to thank for that. I've been throwing a curveball since I was 10 or 11, and just the natural feel of manipulating a ball started then. The grip has changed since then. I've done some things with my thumb to uh, reduce the amount of pop out of my hand. I have my thumb anchored inside of a seam now, so it's less likely to pop up and more directional to pair with the four seam and the cutter. Um, and it's not, my knuckle isn't into the seam like some guys do for their knuckle curves,
Mhm.
but it is a soft spike. My fingertip is on the ball. Um, but it's just, again, it's a feel thing. I've been spinning the ball for a really long time.
So when you're talking about with your thumb, which is interesting, I used to do the Zito one, which is I always everything I do is about my index finger. So I didn't want to do pop the gun or anything like that, where it's the middle finger and the index is
Mhm.
out. You're essentially doing the pop the gun, but then adding the index finger in the
So
middle of the ball, essentially.
yeah,
Uh,
I go pointer fingers on the seam,
gotcha.
ring
Yeah.
finger or middle
So there you
finger
go.
is the one that's guiding, and then on the back side of it, I just have my thumb
Right, and that
hooked
thumb is the
into this.
inside of that C now, because that's actually
Yeah.
one of the things I liked about the Zeta version, was that it moved my thumb instead of outside of the seam with Pop the Gun, uh, the Zeta one has my thumb coming up higher, so it's inside of that. I can push down on that one and feel more, uh, I guess, locked in with it, even though I wouldn't want to push down and counteract the spin.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was very strange adjustment. I made that change in 2018. I
hmm,
kind of retweaked all of my grips in Akron in 2018 when
is
I was
that
in
right?
Double A. Didn't add any pitches, but I pretty much changed every single grip. That's when I flipped the C on my four seam and cutter, and two
Mhm,
seam made a little adjustment, which I still tinker with here and there.
sure.
But yeah, I made that change then. I just found a lot of my I tuck my thumb on my four seam, so it's this
Mhm,
part of my thumb is on the ball, and I was doing that with my curveball as well, and I would find that it would slide out a lot this way, and with the thumb anchored, it just doesn't really come out. So if it doesn't want to come out just from gentle pressure, then it's going to be less likely to pop, and then it just comes down to me manipulating the baseball instead of it's all about reducing error because you're not going to
yeah,
throw it where you
exactly.
want to every time. Um, might look like it, but catchers are really good at making you
Mhm,
look good most of the time. Um, Sometimes you hit your spot perfectly and they don't have to do much work. But a lot of times the catchers are saving us on TV and make us look way better than we are.
Those are the best catchers, right?
No doubt.
Make you feel not alone on that island. They're there for you and working with you, and it's oh my gosh, it's the best. Just 2 more questions before we, start going to the game. Obviously, you changed teams this year, from Tampa to Cleveland, and obviously, we on the outside here, we always don't really know what that means moving from one team to another. But the Rays, very highly regarded as far as their pitching analytics go. Was there something that when you arrived, the Rays really pushed onto you and said, "Hey, we want you to be focused more on this"?
They really let me do my thing. Just
Mhm.
use the 2 months of the season that I was there as just an observatory period, and we continued to talk, and we started to integrate each other's approaches, and I think it's going to be a much smoother process this upcoming season. It'll be great to have a full spring and get everything on the same page. But they really did a good job of just letting me do what I was doing and letting me guide the process instead of forcing something onto me, which I appreciate a lot. But it was very smooth, and I'm excited for a little integration of what they do more into my routine, and then also sharing what I do into what they do. I think it's going to be a really good has been, and I think it's going to continue to be a really good pairing.
Yeah. So it's funny. Aaron was sharing this great story beforehand about coming over to the Rays and just what it's like as a player to jump in. And from the outside, we're like, wait, you're throwing your sinker more. This is weird. Is that something the Rays are doing? But no, it's just kind of figuring, getting the ropes and figuring things out on the fly. And it's cool to hear the Rays like, look, we know that you can do good things, and we don't want to rock the boat too much early on, and then I imagine over time it's one of those relationships that develops and things will come out of that in a good way.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. And speaking of that prep, is really the last thing I really wanted to ask before we get into the game, because you have this game against the Rockies, for example, that we're going to watch. And before you have a start, maybe it was different in Cleveland. Maybe it's the same thing now that you're in Tampa. But what are the kind of things that you prepare for with a game, and how much does that change as you start?
Yeah, not too much changed. I don't see too much changing. Might be adding a few things or subtracting a few things or
Hmm.
streamlining the process, but really just go hitter by hitter based on projected lineup, and then maybe a couple extra guys depending on if somebody's having an off day coming up. But usually do about 10 to 12 guys. I don't think there's usually
Yeah.
many more.
No.
Um, but really focus on the projected lineup, and then if we need to make an adjustment, then we make an adjustment day of. But
Sure.
just go hitter by hitter. Um, Try and take my strengths and see if we can overlap that with anything that the hitter's struggling with. It's not super complicated. I'm not going to get too far into it because then
Yeah. Of course.
kind of
Yeah.
defeats the whole purpose of the pitcher hitter matchup. Um,
Right.
but really just looking for certain things. If I can find anything that's uh, a outlier. But at the end of the day, the prep work that I go into the game is kind of just a guide, and then the game itself is where the actual work begins. And if I do enough prep work, then that allows me to be free enough on the mound where I can try and see certain things that are happening. I can see if the prep work that we did going into it is lining up. If that's the case, then we'll continue down that path. If I see something else is happening, then have to figure out how to get the ball back in my court. Um,
Right.
Really, just the the focus is to keep me in control and recognize when they're trying to do something that's either specific prep towards me or whatever it is. It's just recognizing what's happening in front of me and make an adjustment from there. You can do all the prep you want, but that's computer based. That's what's happened in the past. That's not real time. So
I could not agree
as
more there, Aaron. Yeah.
as long as I'm doing my job on the prep work, then I can be free to
Yeah.
analyze what's happening in front of me, and I think that's what makes it fun. That's what I look forward to every 5th day out there is trying to figure out what's happening and how can I make an adjustment and how can I beat the guy that's standing in front of me.
Sure. Yeah, it's a fun conversation to be had. Obviously, I don't, I'm not gonna hear all the secrets, of course, of you and the Rays and everything now. There are a lot of different ways that you can break down how good a hitter is and how they're going to perform against you. I've seen things like MLB The Show, which is your cold spots and your hot spots. And at the same time, there's small samples to be dealt with that. And is it your cutter? Is it your sinker? Is it
Sure,
in those counts? Is it that what the situation calls for? Is it, expected slugging? Is it, pull tendencies? Is it their swing decisions in 0 counts or 0-2 counts? Or there's so many different ways to tackle the strengths and weaknesses of different players. And at the end of the day, the thing that makes the most sense to me is figuring out what your strengths are. I think the best thing you said there is where it overlaps, right? Cool. This is a thing I'm good at, and this is what we think is a thing that they're bad at. Great. I'm going to try and attack them with that and
sure,
not overextend yourself. I'm very much a believer of everyone's a major leaguer for a reason, which means you are good at certain things and you should lean in on that and not try to overextend yourself just because this guy may be slightly worse at this kind of pitch.
sure.
Uh, they likely are going to be able to take advantage of it, especially if you're trying to throw something that you're not really that used to. So I do want to go into that, of course, a little bit, just, what's going through your head as the game goes on. And I think that's a good transition to see if I can quickly shift between the two things here. I'm so good at this, guys. Look at this. Amazing, amazing job. As we got to the game now, here we go. We have Charlie Blackmon up, lefty. And you're someone I remember freaking out in 2020. You decide, you know what? I'm just going to go cutters and curveballs now for the most part. I think it took you about 35 pitches to throw your first fastball. And y'all might say, hey, that's normal, Nick. It wasn't back then. I still have that tweet somewhere. And Mike Petriello was like, "Yeah, this is kind of weird." I was like, "Yes, it is, Mike. Thank you." But we're gonna watch here as you go against Charlie Blackmon, and of course it's going to be a high cutter. And I imagine after that maybe something along the same lines and a curveball there. They get a lucky, a fortunate call, but it's close enough to be competitive.
See, there's an example of the catcher making us look good.
There you go. So this is a good time to pause and ask, okay, it's 0-2 here. You have Charlie Blackmon, right? What would you normally go with this, especially after Blackmon being passive for the first two pitches?
Yeah, I mean, Charlie's been in this league for a really long time. He's got a lot of pedigree. I doesn't strike out too much, and I think everybody knows that going in. So the goal with him is not to waste too many pitches. Try and get ahead like I did there. Got a little help from the ump. Um, I think there's not really any one pitch that's dictated from those two that I threw. It's pretty much kitchen sink at this point, and
Right.
when it's 0-2, it's just don't get beat with something that you're not comfortable throwing. So either expand to set up a next pitch or go with one of your go-to go-to pitches. I
Mhm.
personally don't remember what happened. I don't have
So you're
that
just
type of memory
excited as we are.
recall.
Okay.
I know some guys can remember exact pitch count and order and everything they do. Something like Tiger Woods can remember clubs and
Mhm.
distances that he hit from 20 years ago. My memory recall is not that good. Like I said, I try and do the best I can to just analyze in the moment, and that's how my brain works. It's not really good with the memory recall side of things.
Yeah, the one of the things that blew me away that I've never heard anyone else do that Pablo showed us was he has a notebook apparently of every at bat of every, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
Um, and I still am blown away that he had that. But one question I do want to ask you: this is the first inning, the first batter. Do you find yourself attacking batters differently the first time to the lineup than you are later on? Is that kind of going through your mind right now, or is it just whatever the best pitch is here?
I've never been a guy who believes in don't throw your off speed until second time through or save this pitch until then. As if if you do that and you end up getting beat on something just because of a concept, then if you can do that, then good for you. But for me, I'm somebody who, like I said, I have to mix it up, be unpredictable, and I'm sure at times I've gotten in my own way, but um, I like the process that I take, and if it's if there's a glaring issue, then I would hope somebody would bring it up to me. Um, but I've never been a believer in save your off speed until the second time through or prep for the next at bat because if you don't get there, then what's the point of saving for it, you know?
I can't agree more. I asked Gallon the same thing. He said, "No, I think like a closer in the first inning. Like get out of that first inning. It's so
Sure.
important. If I
Yeah.
showcase that pitch early on, that means in the third at bat and I don't throw it to them, they're thinking about that pitch.
Sure.
So it
Yeah,
goes
it
both
works both
ways.
ways. It works
Yeah.
both ways for sure.
So love that. What I see here, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna guess that you throw a sinker front door just because he hasn't seen that speed yet, and you can probably surprise him if he's thinking. The book generally says that hitters always look off speed in the first two strike count, so that's where
Go.
my mind
And
goes.
then the
I have no idea
slider
where you're
is
gonna
with
go with.
on
So
the
you went with
ground,
another high
chopped to the
cutter,
right
came
side
back
for
down
Brandon
in the
Lau.
zone to Blackman.
The top.
When you're planning to throw that cutter there, are you trying to sneak it back into the zone, or are you trying to keep that one up?
It's just something that I don't want to leak into the middle of the zone because that's
Mhm.
just based on history in the past. That's something that lefties do hit really well.
Yeah.
If I can start it out of the zone and catch a corner, then awesome. If it's just out of the zone at the end of the pitch, then it's a 1-2 count if they don't swing at it. If they do swing
Right.
at it, it's really hard to handle. So
Yep.
the goal there is just to not let it leak into the middle of the zone.
Yeah, you're one of the rare pitchers I think that can succeed like that. As I was mentioning before, it's the Cannibal McSanchez, the Colin McHugh, Cannibal Sanchez thing of cutters that start out of the zone, come back down. Two counts or two strike counts, batters might be thinking, "Oh, this is a fastball that stays up," and then comes back down and can surprise them. And then you get that kind of ground out. Honestly, Blackman's expecting that. That's not a terrible thing to see in a two strike count, but uh, he's clearly, has no idea what
The
you're going
number
to throw
2
there.
spot again. He was 0
Next
for
one,
4
oh man,
last
first
night.
pitch. That's a cutter or that's a slider at 88.
That's a
That's
cutter.
that's a cutter, but that looked like it had more horizontal movement than we normally see.
It could just the direction of it. It's starting left and also moving left a little eye perception.
Sure.
I struggle with that too on the mound. So I as a righty, most righties fall off to the left. It's really
Mhm.
hard to see movement to my arm side of the plate. It's a lot easier to see it to my glove side, but
Fair.
just the
And
direction that you're throwing the pitch along with the profile
mhm.
sometimes might look like more movement, but
And how much are you judging, the next steps of this at bat, right? You could do it based on, say, all right, the results of this. He swung at this, he didn't swing at that. How much are you making those decisions based on the actual results of it? And how much are you looking at how the batter reacts to the pitch as a whole? Say how aggressive he was on it or his body language when he doesn't take a swing.
sure. I mean, some guys are their plate coverage is incredible, and what they can hit is much bigger than the zone. Some guys only swing within that zone. You take
Hmm.
a guy like Juan Soto, for example, who has one of the best eyes in the game. If he's taking a pitch, it's most likely a ball. If he's swinging at it, it's most likely a strike. Um, on the flip side, some guys they might swing at everything outside the zone, but they might have a contact zone that's as big as their swing radius.
Right.
Hopefully, you have a guy who's the the ideal situation is you find what pitch can create a swing outside the zone that they can't cover or looking like something that they think is a pitch they can cover and then it's not.
Hmm.
Just getting them in between. That's my goal as a starting pitcher is to just get hitters in between and mix and match. But something like this, I know he expanded on OO pitch, so I would assume I went back to it or see how far I can go with it or see if he'll do it again just to get into the 0-2 count. Um, the other side of that, you could go back in and see if he's looking away early, see if we can get a rollover with a two seam in.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure I expanded again. I don't remember exactly, but I think again a pitch like that it allows for a lot of different options coming out of that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's to me, I see that as such a gift in two ways, not just getting 0-1 and a pitch out of the zone, but that you see, yeah, Tovar is swinging out of his shoes to get a fastball right now. He wanted so badly to jump on a heater that he's just he's swinging at his pitches in the other batter's box,
Sure, it's a
horizontally.
talented hitter who trusts his hands, and
Right.
at the end of the day, these are the type of guys that can beat you even if you make your pitch, as we will
Yep.
get to on the last pitch of the game that I threw in this one.
But yeah, there is. I love that instinct you have. Like maybe I can just get a quick out now if I execute a sinker. There was a question about like risk reward of that, right? Because you know that he wants that. So if you
Sure.
don't get that inside enough, then that's actually going to be something that punishes you. While you just threw that
Sure.
that cutter like that, you might just honestly throw it again and make sure that he shows you he's not going to swing at it, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what we get. 0-1. So that is the slider, that 81, or is that the curve? I can't tell actually with the raise angle.
That's a
That is the
slider, I'm
slider.
pretty
Okay, good.
sure.
Yeah, that's at 81. I mean,
Yeah.
88, I know that's not your slider, but I was like, man, that's so much horizontal movement. And that's a new slider, right? That's something that's kind of changed. You started developing that mid-season, I think, with the Guardians, and I
Yeah.
think you were using it a little bit more with the raise.
Yeah, the usage I think might have been a little up with the Rays, just coincidence, comfortability with that pitch. It's an old slider grip that I went back to. I tried working on a sweeper the year before and found success with it in a vacuum, but it was not something that was beneficial for the rest of my repertoire. So I just put it in the pocket. Um,
Mhm.
and this is an older grip that just continued to tweak and will continue to focus on that feel and see where it plays.
Man, so yeah, this is such a good pitch to throw at this point because he's already jumping out of his shoes for a fastball. You throw even a slower one, and this one just end of the bat, completely mistimed all of that.
Sure,
There's
it
no
did.
way you
It
give
did.
him a fastball. You can't give him one at this point, right?
And
And yeah, you
strike
just plop
three.
that. That's the curve though at
That was a
80.
curve, yeah.
Okay. Got one. I got it right. Finally. Okay. Normally I'm good at this, I promise, Aaron. The velocity threw me
I
off at
sometimes I
81.80.
don't. Yeah, I mean the slider, like I said, it does different things at times. So sometimes it's hard to tell with certain angles what it is. I think the curveball. Once when I was in Tampa, it was a little bit firmer than what I was used to in the past. It was anywhere from 75 to 78. I think in Tampa
Mhm.
it was closer to 78 up to 81. But I think that was just everything was pulled up a little bit for
Yeah.
those last 2 months. But just working through the delivery at that point and was everything seemed to be in sync.
Nice. And are you trying to make that a called strike three, or is that something that you were trying to get into the dirt and then just happened to land the zone?
Probably I think the goal for me is where's the danger zone
Mhm.
with that type of pitch. It's the one that ends up in the bottom inner third to a righty.
Yeah.
If it's on that outer edge, regardless of height, if it's where it fit where that landed, that's a ball almost the whole way. I'm sure I was trying to bounce it, but just minimizing the damage locations and understanding target zones versus where is an okay miss because you're never going to hit your spot every single time
No,
you
of
throw
course.
100 pitches in a game. You might hit exact spots 10 to 15 times, and then certain misses, small misses, maybe probably 60 to 70% of the time, big misses 10 to 15. But
Right.
it's just really understanding the zones that are damage locations for each pitch, and then trying to maximize that.
Yeah, that's an interesting mentality, right? Of you're more focused there with the curveball east versus west, right? So you're focused on getting that away as opposed to obviously inside, but instead of thinking of it as north south in this way, you'd prefer to focus. Okay, first I got to get it away, then I'm going to worry about it being too high or too low.
Sure.
Cool. All right, moving on here. You got 2 outs here in the first inning.
Pitches, 6
Nice and easy,
strikes, 2
McMahon. No
outs.
problem, right? Cutter that comes in. Ooh,
Man,
that was a dangerous one.
Yep,
That was
that's a
close.
mistake.
That scared me.
Yeah, that's one where
Obviously
you
down and in lefty,
mhm,
number 3 hitter, McMahon. Cutter
sure.
came into the bat, and he's aggressive on it as he should. You don't really get much information for that because that's just a
2
Yeah,
to begin this
what
game
I
with
get
21 home.
what I get from that last pitch is I made a mistake and I didn't get punished, so don't do it again.
yeah. There you go. So it looks like you're singing back inside. I would imagine
Home
this would be
runs.
a sinker coming over then. No, you
Breaks
just
his
get it
bat,
further
hits
inside. That's
the
beautiful.
one hopper to the
And that's
right side
terrible
beat,
luck.
tries to bear.
Happens.
That's the game. But that's really cool because you threw a cutter that was a mistake and you actually used that to your advantage because now McMahon is like, oh man, I really want to make sure I take advantage of that next time.
Exactly.
And so you take that mentality he has right now of frustration, and too much of a focus on one part of the zone that then you start there and then you come further in, where he's just now committed and swings at a cutter way inside.
Handed.
Unfortunately for you, it was a dumb hit to third base that No shit, you know, the shift messed you up.
Looks at a
But that
fastball.
worked. And there is a sinker, I believe, at 92,
Yes.
inside corner that lands. I love this. I love that you have this emphasis of, hey, if I'm throwing a sinker to a right-hander, I mean, I think in college you were saying it was cutter's glove side and sinker's arm side. Right-handers, I mean, are you throwing your sinker anywhere else outside of arm side?
I would go away with it as well, just to start that as a ball, end up a strike. Really,
Mhm.
not too many pitches I throw are strike pitches. They're either ball strikes or strike balls.
Sure. It's the
And I
way to
think
be.
that's the goal. If I'm living strike, it's probably going to be a long day for me and a short outing. Um, but it just, yeah, just trying to. I think I hadn't thrown any fastballs into Tovar in that the second
Yeah,
at
no,
bat
you
of
didn't.
this game. So this is the first, might have
I
been the
think it's
first
the first
fastball
fastball
I
you've thrown
threw.
all game.
Right.
And it's good to see that. Cool, I have that one. That's great. And it doesn't surprise me that you move away from it after because you don't really have to lean on that sinker. You have too many good pitches to just lean on
Sure.
that one.
Sure.
So you missed with the curveball, you missed with the cutter at 2-1. A lot of guys, I see these mistakes where 2-1, you have a fastball for a strike, you miss with a cutter and a curveball. They feel like they have to throw a fastball now because they have to get a strike. They have to get back into the count. I imagine that's not your philosophy.
It is not. I'm pretty comfortable with all of my pitches at any point. That's something that I've focused and worked on a lot. That's what I focus on in bullpens is just feel for each pitch. When I miss with something, what's a pitch that'll bring me back into it? That's not necessarily a fastball. Sometimes it is a fastball and it works to my advantage. Just knowing that I do throw so many off speeds so frequently, sometimes I can get away with just throwing fastballs in counts where I typically wouldn't. But I think the ability to throw multiple pitches to get back into a count is very very nice to have as a starter.
Oh yeah, that's a necessity for someone at your level, really. And you do it well. I mean, this is 2-1. At 1-1, you threw a cutter that was down in pretty much at the opposite batter's box to the
Yeah,
right-handed Rogers.
unusable.
Right, but it's that's going to happen.
Mhm.
What goes in your head in that moment? What are you thinking to make that adjustment to? I would imagine 2-1 here would be a cutter, because that to me feels like your bread and butter. Like, okay, I need this good strike. It's not a fastball. It's a cutter. How do you make that adjustment?
Sometimes it's just a little feel thing. Sometimes it's trying to make sure I don't miss into that damage zone,
Hmm.
which I'd much rather miss down in a way in the location that I did than miss in the heart of the plate where it then just turns into a slow fastball. Because the cutter itself as a pitch, it's interesting. It acts in different ways at different heights and different
Yeah.
locations. It's a different pitch in each quadrant. If you broke it down into one, two, three, four, with one being facing the catcher top left, two
Hmm.
being top right. Um, Up and away to a righty, it kind of stays on plane, and because you're throwing it to the left side, might have a little more horizontal. Up and into a righty, might have a little. It might look straight on TV, but it's defying going to them, and it kind of just cuts back into the zone. And as you bring it down, it has more depth to it. If you, like you mentioned the show, if you think about the arrows that come up when you're looking at it, it might have one or
Yeah.
two arrows this way as it's higher, and then the lower it goes might have two or three
Hmm.
going down. And I think that's the unique thing about the cutter itself. I'm sure there's a lot of guys in the league that throw sliders that are really just cutters.
Oh
The
man, you have no idea. It drives us wild. What
Sure,
separates a cutter from a slider? Oh my gosh. But but yeah, I mean, so just really going into that a little bit deeper. You tug that one down in a way. Is it, I would always think you got to find something that just to focus on the next one to ensure that I don't do the same thing again. And also, of course, don't just throw one straight in the middle. Is it
yeah.
okay? Shoulder, keep that tucked in, or is it, hey, I got to push off harder? What is your go-to
Um,
there?
I don't think it's anything like that. It's just I've done that before in bullpens or I've done that before in games. Just go to the next pitch. I don't think there's
Mhm.
any huge adjustment. I don't think it's a issue to even obviously don't want to be 3-1. 3-1 versus 2-2 is a drastic difference in terms
Yeah.
of expected slug and average and all of the numbers. But again, it's not the worst case to be back there, so there's no point in making a huge adjustment at that point.
Cool. So I'm expecting a cutter. It better be a cutter. Oh no, curveball, great, awesome. I love this because to me it's 70% cutters and curveballs has been what I've been saying for a while about your approach. And when you're able to throw either of those, cutter or curve, in any situation like that, that's when you're going to have a good game. Obviously this is a great one here. I just thought, oh yeah, it's going to be the cutter. Of course, that's all reliable. And here you are throwing a curveball beautifully. So we get to the second inning now.
Primarily just to keep his bat in the lineup
A
and
lefty
an
up.
Taylor
There's
Walls
that high
gets
cutter.
back with each
You don't
other
get the call.
like
That's
that.
not fair.
And, he said,
I'll
"But
make a
I'm
phone
just
call
gonna go
for you,
out
Aaron.
there
No
and
worries.
I'm just gonna play." And he said,
And then you go with the backdoor
actually
cutter. And do you feel more comfortable? This is something I actually been noticing a lot. Is like you actually, Corbin Burns makes a career on this. Is that backdoor cutter? I love the one that you threw. I think it was to McMahon, which was that inside cutter, as opposed to the backdoor one. Are there certain situations that you find yourself, hey, I want to stay backdoor on this guy, or hey, I want to actually try and work inside on him?
Sure. Yeah, I think the hitter kind of dictates that, who's good at pulling their hands inside of the ball, who's good at staying away. There's very few guys that are avoid throwing cutters away. There are a couple. Not going to reveal who they are,
Yeah,
but
well, sure.
there are a couple that do handle that cutter up and away well. But those are the ones that struggle with the cutter in. So it's kind of just making sure you're mixing and matching and not living in one part of the zone and using what the hitter is doing to dictate what you do next. But
up the middle here with Nolan Jones at the plate.
No, you could have kept going. I
Down the right field line, and that ball is
that's easy. Cool. He pulled the curveball down and in. It's fine.
That pitch, throwing that is it's not a pitch I wanted to throw, but I was down to 1 or 2 seconds on the pitch clock, and unfortunately that's I'm sure some would say fortunately, but unfortunately as a pitcher that's part of the game now. There will be times for me particular at those 5-6 pitches where I'm going to be throwing pitches that I don't necessarily want to, and I'd rather throw a pitch than take a ball. And that's something that I might have to dive further into, of when it's okay to take a ball versus throwing a pitch to certain guys. But
do you have a pitch comm on you?
In my hat. I don't have the controller, and that's something that I'll continue to work through. I did it a few times in bullpens just to see how it was, but then you get into, if you only do it on certain pitches, or if you do that and then you don't go to a certain area with pitch tipping and how many guys study video on that, it's just a whole another can of worms.
Oh, that's interesting.
With 15 seconds to decide,
think about that side of it. To me, I would always be like, no, I need a pitch comm. I need to be able to dictate this as I go. But then, of course, you want to know what the catcher thinks.
Yeah. In an ideal world, it's something I use for when I don't agree with something. If I ever don't agree with the catcher, it's because I feel very strongly about a different pitch. And if we're not on the same page for some reason and it takes a while to get to it, it is difficult with 6 pitches to call from, and then 3 of those have locations, kind of direct locations with them. So that's now 9 different options. If you're cycling through, you only get 15 seconds total, and there's got to be a decision in between those. So
I honestly, it never registered with me, like kitchen sink guys, how much they would be affected by the pitch clock. It makes all the sense. But yeah, like Chris Bassett and you, Darvish, you guys must, have a great time at parties talking about this.
Yeah, I'll have to, probably something I'll work on in spring, of how to make that a little bit easier going in. So it's just, again, didn't want to mess with too much as the season went on, but it's something that we'll continue to work on, and something that needs to continue to be ironed out on our end as players, adjusting to some of these new rules coming into the game.
Sure. All right, so here you are, 1-2. You just had Jones crush a inside curveball down the line.
That was actually a slider. So
that was a slider at 81.
Yes.
I'm figuring it out. I promise everyone listening to this that if you saw the video, it is tough to tell at times with this angle. I would think, I know it sounds crazy, but this would be one of those moments to whip out the four-seamer upstairs.
It's either that. I think I either go cutter in or two-seam in. I forget which
Okay.
one, but I haven't gone truly in on him, and he just pulled a ball that was middle of the plate down, so he hit
Right, you
that
wanna maybe
foul.
slow down his bat,
If
possibly.
I go in, then I don't think he can keep it fair type of pitch.
Right.
I think that's where I went.
Came up
Let's
in
see.
last night's game and eventually scored a run.
Yeah, that is the sinker coming back over. Great pitch here, and 90 right on the edge, and he just fouls it off. How do you react to that?
That might have been a cutter too. I'm not exactly sure. This angle is difficult.
Well, 1-2, here we go. Oh, and you actually threw.
There's a
Oh, he didn't foul
curveball.
that off, did he? He didn't foul that off. Oh my god, he
They
fouled
called
that off.
it. Yeah, they called it.
He did not foul out. It was in the dirt. It was a curve on the dirt.
Upstairs.
There's the four-seamer in 93. And he lays off that one.
And he's out this
And then he threw a
time.
curveball right down the middle that he just can't handle. And that's a fun at bat because you saw Jones take advantage of a breaking ball early on and just not do enough with it.
Yeah.
It is interesting just for him to see, okay, here's another one. He wasn't able to go for it. Him passing on the 93 upstairs, maybe that gave you a hint that he was more on the fastball than he would be on a breaking ball.
Yeah, maybe a little in between. I did go down. Not that I'm trying to throw that curveball right down the middle, but just there is that tunneled off the four seam I had just thrown, and the off speed was below the zone. So if you're a hitter and you know the off speed's only going to be below the zone, you don't really have to cover the top part of the zone with that. And then you're now reacting to fastball up and then trying to cover curveball instead of reading off speed in the zone. I think it's a totally different approach for a hitter is reacting to an off speed coming off a fastball or just reacting to off speed in the zone.
Yeah, definitely. This is the most important question I'm going to ask you the entire time. After striking out a guy twice in the same at bat, what's going through your head as you strut around the mound now?
Relief that didn't get caught up in something. I don't know. Sometimes it's relief, sometimes it's all right, ball don't lie type mentality.
Absolutely.
Just I don't know, move on to the next one at that point.
Yeah, right. That is the greatest feeling in the world, by the way, that strut around the mound. There's no better feeling. First pitch, I call that free real estate if you throw a curveball in the zone.
Bald though.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Conversation.
This is unfair. A cutter away, I understand. That's interesting. He didn't swing at the curveball. He doesn't want a curveball. He wants a fastball. So they're cutter away. He doesn't chase that one. Very frustrating. Looks like you're setting up inside now for a sinker, which makes sense.
On the ground,
oh, that's beautiful. Foul. This is the most underrated pitch in baseball. If you can throw that every single time, you will get a strike at 2-0. If it's either a foul ball or it's an out to third. Sure. I want to watch that one again. This is
the danger is
on the ground.
Yeah, the danger is missing in the zone there. If that's in the zone, I'm getting a new ball.
Right, but you didn't. You got.
Correct.
Well, you're gonna get a new ball in a different way.
Yeah.
But 2-1 swing, that tells you the cutter's alive now, and curveball works too.
Home run
miss out of the zone at 3-1. So it's going back to the sinker. That one is now more over the plate and is able to hit to left field. It all makes sense. To me, the critical one was this, which is a 2-1. Because this would have been free real estate, I think, again. His aggression on the 2-0 fastball inside, he's pretty much telling you, okay, I just want that fastball. Maybe the cutter away that he didn't swing at, he just read it as outside the entire way.
Yeah, I guess the way to test that is to go to a backdoor two seam to see if he's sitting on a lane or if he's just really waiting for hard in until he gets to 2 strikes. But I never got to 2 strikes, so I don't know.
Well, you should have, because it was a 0-0 curveball for a strike. So man on first. Do you find yourself when you enter the stretch, for some guys, they need like a bat or so to really get into it. Some say, no, I make sure that my warm-ups are there. Do you find yourself at any time struggling with the transition from the windup to the stretch?
Not really, not this past year. I never really thought about it, but I think my my wind-up delivery is so slow on
Yeah,
purpose that I never really it's not a huge momentum thing where I'm using my movement as gaining extra ground or force going into the stretch part of the delivery, so it's very similar. If anything, it's
Picked
nice to have
prior.
a couple extra seconds and the ability to step off, which,
sure. Yeah.
with nobody on, you can't do.
It's unbelievable. Like, oh, thankfully. Okay, man, I can finally step off if I need to. All right, so
Advance
1-0
1
here
for 2
coming to
against him.
Profar. So is the curveball for you? I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, when you're in those situations, I need a strike right now. Do you find yourself turning more to the curveball, especially in a game like this where you've already thrown some for a strike in the zone, or is it more the
It
cutter?
it depends.
Hmm.
I think having the option for multiple is always nice because again, the hitter can't just sit on one, and if they are sitting on a 1-0 curveball as a I don't like using the term "get me over," but if they are sitting on it at that, then I have to make that adjustment, and sometimes you just gotta tip your cap, but I think
Sure.
having the ability to throw more than one is always nice.
And you don't like the term "get me over" because I imagine it changes your mentality as you throw it, and you don't want to overthink it.
Yeah, even if it's not that pitch mentality, if it's the next pitch where you have get me over mentality and then that might leak into the next pitch with
Hmm.
intensity or effort, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think there's a way to do get me over with different speeds versus um, the thought of getting this in the zone. I don't ever like to just get a ball into the zone. I think it's every pitch I throw tries to be driven through the zone or through an area that's close to the zone, that type of
Right.
thing.
Every pitch with a purpose.
Yeah.
So 1-1. Oh, come on, Blue. That's a cutter that came across the play. A lot of horizontal movement on that one. Pushed back Profar. Should be 1-2. But you see a reaction like that,
It's too close.
you know where Profar is looking now. You know he's looking
Sure.
away.
Hmm.
Uh, and
That's gonna
you drop a curveball in there, 2-2, easy. No problem. 2-2. Oh man, there's so many different ways you could do this. In my head, I'm like, okay, this is the perfect inside sinker pitch
Yeah.
because he's away. He hasn't really seen heat in this at bat. And
in
you do
you
go with the
go. Yes,
fastball. I
on
don't
the
know if that
appeal
that was your
against
four
Cabot.
seamer, I assume, or I
That
know
was
you
a
do
four
also
seam.
throw sinkers up there, so I don't know.
That was a four seam.
Okay, good. So much vertical break. I think it's something like 19 or 20 inches of it. It's incredible. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. That was so high up too.
That's
And
the
it didn't matter,
power of the curveball.
right? Oh my gosh.
Luis
That
Montero
that when you're able to
is
execute
the
that
hitter.
high four seamer and surprise like that and also drop the curve. Oh, those are the good days. So here you go. You have that's a slider at 81 for a strike 1-1. It's Montero. And there's another curve at 78. And now, I mean, you see his body language. He's
Mhm.
upset at you. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want the junk. He wants a heater that he can crush. When you see that, are you saying, fine, I'm just going to throw more curveballs until you do something about it? Or you can throw the same pitch you just threw the Profar and he'll jump out of his shoes trying to hit it.
Sure.
What's your
At
instinct?
this point, I'm just trying to make sure I'm locked in on what the hitter's doing and seeing that frustration and then
Mhm.
making a decision off of that. As long as I have a decision with reason, I'm okay with the result. As long as there's conviction behind the pitch, I know I'm not going to make the right decision every time, and even if I do, they're still hitters. They get paid a lot of money to do what they do as well.
I
So,
was laughing before I heard you say every time. I thought you were just going to end the sentence as I'm just not going to make the right decision. That's fine. But I mean, my instinct here is generally like there's the ego side of it's like, fine, you want the fastball, here you go. And I know that I am confident that I'm going to execute the right one that's going to work. But the smart thing is always just don't overdo this. I mean, honestly, I don't actually think you do this too often. Do you ever utilize your cutter as a fake fastball down and away, off the plate that way, or do you really just focus on it upstairs?
it depends on how if I can or if I have located a fastball down and away. So
Mhm.
it really depends on what's happened that day. Um, like I said, I live primarily at the top of the zone. If I can show control of the bottom with a fastball, that makes a lot of things easier.
Sure.
But that's not a that's not part 1 or 2 of my repertoire.
Yeah,
So if it is
that's
there,
fair
it
enough.
makes a lot of things easier. But it's also a very that's something that I'm always continuing to work on, and sometimes it's there, and that makes for a fun day.
Mhm.
But if it's not, then just landing 1 or 2 might help instead of
Right.
living down there. But yeah,
Here's the
that's
strike
definitely the
on it.
right thought.
Yeah, I see that working so well right now here. As you, of course, yeah,
Oh,
you go with I'm gonna say that's the slider at 81.
Slider.
And then
and he
there's the
is
curveball at
out on
78.
strikes.
And again, see, you don't play the ego game. You're better than that. You don't need to do that. Easy stuff here.
2
All right, we go to the
innings.
top of the third as we are, of course, crawling
Doyle
through this
leading
game.
off for
All my fault
Colorado.
completely. Hey, you got something back there. There's 85. That looks like it's a harder slider at 85.
I don't know. I'm gonna say I don't know on that one.
I mean, you were saying before that you have different slider grips, right? You've kind of messed around with that a little
Sure.
bit. So I'm gonna say that was a slider that just kind of came out more behind it.
To the strike.
And I guess you're fortunate that you did, because if it had more aggressive movement, it would have gone further away from the zone, no called strikes. So we're all happy here. 0-1 back to the curveball, and I love this. You're not giving in on fastballs. You're realizing that your secondary stuff is working so well. And then you finally give him a heater at 0-2, and it's four-seamer upstairs, I believe.
Yep.
When you're throwing an upstairs four-seamer, are you trying to get it inside the zone, above the zone? Where are you mentally ensuring that you go for the ball?
Yeah, I'm okay with anywhere from maybe 3/4 of the ball in the zone to
Mhm.
2 balls above. Just it depends on the guy, how likely they are to swing at that, how quickly I get to that situation where I can use it. Um, Sometimes when you're in control, you're just in control, and the hitter's playing defense instead of offense, and
Yeah.
that's the best type of day when you feel like you're on offense on that mound. I'm pretty sure Pedro is quoted as saying that he always felt like he was on offense and the hitters were on defense, and that's such a unique and cool mentality to have. And when you have those days where you're fully in control, it truly does feel like you're on offense, and that's an awesome feeling.
Yeah, I used to describe it as I felt like I was always behind the ball before, instead of me behind. I was always behind the ball as opposed to feeling like I'm throwing backwards on the mound. Like on release, I would feel everything going toward the plate and feel like I can put this wherever I want. Where the days where I'm struggling, I feel like my momentum's going the opposite direction almost. Like you're throwing it off the mound, it just doesn't have that train behind you.
Sure.
But what's so interesting about this one here for me is like that should be there all the time. I mean, that's 92 up like that, and I want to see a ton of that more this year. I don't know.
Right
I think
there.
that's there for you,
We'll see.
especially with that huge hook.
Charlie Blackman.
Oh, and then you also compare with that cutter.
Pitch
So
and a
here's
popper
you trying to
short
get free real
center.
estate against
Siri
Blackman,
coming in,
and you
and
get a
he's
quick
going to
out.
get
Like
there to
this is
make the
why
catch.
people don't swing at the curveball a lot, is because
Right.
they will fly out. And that's a lovely gift. You just got one pitch, one out. Third inning, you try to get some more free real estate. You miss it down.
Curveball.
And imagine you're going to adjust now with the cutter. You do. You get the called strike. This is easy. Pitching is so easy, Aaron. This is the best time.
That's two seam there.
Oh man, you are so locked into this point. I mean, you barely missed with the first pitch curve. Then you get the cutter top left corner of the zone to Tovar, and then you get the fastball coming back over perfectly, and you get the call there. And when you're cooking like this, you feel like you can throw anything. I imagine. I have no idea what your 1-2 pitch is going to be. Do you know?
I don't remember, but I just know this type of guy is handsy based on that first pitch I threw him of the first at bat was 2, 3 balls outside the zone, and he was ready to swing at it and was close to it. So I think it's just trusting the expansion and hoping to use his aggressiveness, and with good reason, aggressiveness against him.
Yeah. I mean, he has to be thinking it's going to be another breaker, but does that matter? Let's see. So you go curveball, bottom of the zone. He sends it for a ride to center field. And I mean, you were talking before about like east-west. You did get it generally away on that one. But with a guy like Tovar in the way that you're talking, it sounds like to you that was a lot further away from where you were trying to get it.
I mean, again, it depends. But that pitch in particular, I would assume I threw a curveball prior in that same at bat that was in a better mislocation, so he saw
Mhm.
that as a little bit higher. That's a big difference for a hitter. If you see one that is a swing at me that's a ball down below, and then you get one that's a swing at me that's at the bottom of the zone, that's a huge difference. That's much better barrel coverage.
Right.
Less you have to reach down and get, and more so you can just get your barrel down to it, and that's what he did. He hit it good. I got
Yeah, the way I
for
see it is
fortunate
especially
it's
that
not,
one.
fortunate it's
Mhm.
not a stadium that's 389 to center.
Yeah, fortunately. Um, the way I see that is on release, that looks like your four-seamer, right? You're trying to tunnel to
Sure.
that, and Tovar is kinda thinking he's thinking 2 things. 1, if that is a four-seamer, he's gonna swing at that regardless because it's close enough to the zone. He's Tovar. And 2, he's likely sitting breaking ball because it's the first 2 strike pitch, and of course, that's where you got him in the first at bat.
Yeah.
So then that is a strike for the entire way. Fortunately for him, it landed inside an area that he could get the bat on it.
Yep.
So
In front
something
of the wall.
to follow.
Every
I think
card's
you're
a
gonna get to
winner.
over. You
For
should
more
get to over
info,
one more
visit
time. But I mean,
racerbaseball.com.
we're already like getting close to an hour here,
/shirts.
and Aaron
That's
has
good.
been incredibly kind to join us for this. We are in the fourth inning. 1-1 pitch is coming. He just missed with the curveball down and away. And this is McMahon here as you go back to that cutter inside, and you see a whiff on that. And you normally don't get too many whiffs on that one. Normally that would return a foul ball or a grounder to him to first base. And you see McMahon getting beat a second time on the same thing that you essentially beat him on the first one.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the first
throw another
inning,
one.
the broken bat base hit was a little higher, so just
Mhm.
getting a little bit into that dead zone. That's kind of a some guys can cover down in there. Again, if that's into the zone, that's really, really danger. A lot of teams will call that the loop or
Yeah. Yeah, that's the danger
um,
zone. Down and
yeah,
into a lefty? No, 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 no. Stay
sure.
away from that inside the zone
Yeah,
completely.
so it's just knowing that he's swinging at that location from the previous at bat and trying to either go back to it, knowing that I did break the bat and most of the time beat him there. Just trying to go back to it and see if I can get a similar result, only favor me this time.
Mhm. Yeah, man, I'm just thinking, all right. So now that he's swung and missed on this, you can play with him so much. You could throw that front hip sinker now up and in. Or does that go against like, well, no, he's gonna swing it anyway, so
Yeah,
that'll be more hittable.
depend if you're swinging at that lane, then that might be
Yeah.
something that might not work. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where McMahon is now. Now he's like, okay, do I have to resist this pitch or not? So instead, you just
And
go
he
straight four
chases that
seamer
pitch
upstairs. And
up.
why not? I want it every single time you're in 2 strikes because you don't throw that.
Brendan.
I mean, you're saving it essentially only for 2 strikes now, correct?
yeah, I don't want to say that with certainty, but
Well, no, of course not. Yeah.
it depends. Everything every answer I'm gonna give is it depends, but um, it's nice to have.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. Actually, your teammate Eflin adapted that mentality with his four seamer,
Yeah,
featuring a ton more this year in just 2 strikes. And that does not have the same shape that yours does. It is, as far as attributes go, kind of pedestrian, but he's
I
able to
think
utilize
the
it as a surprise in 2 strikes. And apparently, especially with his other options in his repertoire, it's a surprise.
Yeah, I think
Um,
just the variance from his true sinker to his four
yeah,
seam is similar to my variance from my running two seam. I don't like to call my sinker a sinker because it's got over
I'm
10
with you.
vertical.
You
I
are
prefer
very
to
much a
call it.
lateral two-seam guy. There
I
used to be a
prefer to
distinction
use it
back in the
as
day.
a yes. Now it's all sinker. I prefer to call it a runner or a two seam, and that's something that
Yeah.
Austin Hedges was very adamant with me when he was my catcher in Cleveland. He's like, get rid of sinker thought, just only call it a two seam. I don't want you to throw a sinker. It's not a sinker.
Yeah.
Make sure it's a runner, and then you can just let it rip and run in there and be the backwards cutter, essentially, is the goal.
Yeah, I love that. I will not call it a sinker anymore. Thank you for that. So here you are,
And Rogers.
4th inning, 1 out. First pitch
down
curveball.
to
I love this
third.
every time.
He
You have yet to be burned on a
will
first
make
pitch
that play
curveball.
across the diamond.
And sure, you had one that was a ball or something like that, but I love that. And then you have a cutter, and this is a standard thing of, I think the first at bat was 3 pitches or maybe 4. And then you
It
had
should have been 3 or 4, but it was
right.
extended.
That's right. And then the first pitch, of course, just got another out. So you'll see this typically. Are you aware? I mean, most hitters, they don't want a quick inning for you. If you're the
For
third
sure.
batter of an inning, you've had like less than 5 or fewer pitches, they will take the first one.
Yeah, it's kind of an unwritten rule.
Right.
I'm sure you can be burned on it, but if you don't, it's a quick inning. So
yeah.
Strike.
But you, I mean, at the
2
same time,
gone
you're
here in the
also
fourth.
told us about that mentality of not, taking your foot off the pedal really, as well. But yeah, you got that first pitch strike. You went upstairs. There was a situation. I think that was a 4-seamer at 0-1 that you went upstairs. So why were you in that count saying, you know what, this is the time I actually want to surprise with the upstairs fastball instead of setting that up for 2 strikes?
Could be to set up the next pitch. Some guys are better at hitting fastballs than others. Maybe better at 2 strikes than others. So it could be a situation where it's that. I don't remember specifics of the at bat with Nolan or what he does, but just doing something different than the previous at bat. My second time through the lineup. This is probably my lefties are on maybe 5th or 6th at bat against a lefty in this game with some similar profiles. So just showing a different approach.
Makes sense. So looking at 1-1 pitch again. He went with the curveball and he's swinging out of his shoes now. I mean, even though it was a ball with that 4-seamer upstairs, you establish that lane. You throw this on top of it. There's more confusion.
That location, first at bat in the second inning, he hit a slider home run foul. So that's similar location, off speed. Maybe he's trying to keep that one fair, and it just has a little bit more depth than that slider.
I mean, you have to imagine, okay, he got that one that he hit foul. You struck him out twice on these breaking balls in that same at bat. And then now you've thrown a third that he's swung over. It has to be haunting him now. Now you get to 1-2. That's all he's thinking about is this breaking ball. This is the perfect time to throw that high fastball. No, that's the fun that I have over here. And so do you almost. That was a 4-seamer, correct? Or was that actually that 2-seamer?
Might have been a 2-seam. It's hard to tell with this angle for sure.
Do you find yourself doing that against lefties, going kind of like middle away with the 2-seamer?
Honestly, it could have been a 4-seam. Like it's hard to tell at times. Like it's not a true sinker, so there's not any downward action to it.
Right.
On video, there is a difference between the two, but I think
I
that
would
was just
be
a pitch where I'm targeting an away location, knowing that he took just a ball above the zone already. So it's just kind of let me move the ball around, knowing that he just went down to try and golf a ball. Let me change his eyes a little and then see if I can use that again.
That makes sense. Yeah, I would be surprised if it was a 2-seamer away. I generally, my whole philosophy about 2-seamers, more so 2-seamers than sinkers, away to opposite handedness with 2 strikes is asking for a base hit to left field. Sure. So I would imagine that would have been the 4-seamers trying to go upstairs as opposed to trying to sneak one off the plate. And there's a backdoor cutter, which I love that. Especially after doing that fastball beforehand. That's in his mind. Same lane, comes right back. He's too late on it. Doesn't realize he's coming back over. Easy. And once again, of course, Jones is still thinking about those breaking balls. So feels good to have a guy's number, doesn't it?
I know Nolan pretty well. We were together in Cleveland for a while. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That one must have felt good. Okay, so 5th inning here. First pitch curveball, and it's, what do you know? Foul ball, free real estate. You get strike 1. It's too easy. It's too easy. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the pitch. Let's see. 0-1. So you see the aggression on the first pitch, and you go with the 4-seamer upstairs 92. You get the call, which is shocking. You normally don't get those.
Right. Yeah. I kind of wish I'd didn't get that because he got a little pissed off and he put a little extra into this swing that he's about to get. So,
well, I mean, you see that take, and what is going through your head for the 0-2 pitch?
I typically trust the hitters if they're not certain about a strike call. I know they know the zone really well. So in that moment, I'm thinking, okay, I got away with one. Let's try and use it to my advantage. I don't think I did that here.
Strike.
I
I
end up
imagine
throwing a
it'd be a curveball
curveball.
down is what you normally would do.
Not
Oh,
Right.
not
a
down.
long one to left.
So that
And
one
this
went
one's
middle
gonna get out
of
of
the
here.
plate, which
Yeah.
and
Intention's good, but just missed my spot, and he put a little extra into that swing after not liking the pitch call before. Just missed my spot, and he hit it really hard. Happens.
yeah, it's an interesting at bat because because okay, so the first pitch he's showing that he wants to swing at a curveball, right? If he's not looking for a breaking ball, he doesn't swing 0-0 at that thing. And so he does, and he misses it. And then by taking also the fastball second pitch, he's showcasing that he's still looking for that. And he didn't get the curveball. Fastball goes by. And 0-2, still looking for the curveball, gets the one that happens to be mistake down the middle. The problem is that after the 0-2 pitch, the fastball, you don't want to do the same thing again because you got away with it a bit. And that means that based on your arsenal, it's a lot of slower things, which he's kind of timed for there. So I don't even know what I would normally suggest or something. Maybe a cutter. I don't know.
I
Back
can
on that, but
try
that's
and
hard.
pick a different pitch, but if it's executed, it's fine.
But right, if you
I
get the thing down
play
properly, then
play that
that's
game all the
story.
time. Was that the
Yeah,
right
I
pitch?
know.
Well, it's not about the pitch, it's about the execution. And that's the pitch I had confidence throwing. I missed my spot, and he did not miss. So
Right.
he missed on the
Got
first
into
pitch of
this
the
one.
at bat,
Well,
hit it
just
foul,
after we were talking
and
about
didn't do it
Civale,
again.
his pitches really have not.
Well, you got to
found
move
an-
on, and that's what you do. You get a nice backdoor cutter to a lefty to Profar, and a fastball upstairs that tunnels really well with that. Right, that's the four seamer, 92 up, out of the zone, could come back down and be the cutter. It's not. Now you have him away for two.
Swing.
I'm wondering if you're going to go back there. And I assume that was a four seamer that was supposed to be up instead of
Yeah,
That's got
just
93
away.
around the outside edge, but middle height that he fouls off.
Yeah, but you can see he's just trying to slice that. It's kind of in between. So
And you don't have your splitter, right, at this point?
I added a splitter a few years ago, and I went back to a regular changeup. So it's now just a regular changeup.
We haven't seen any of those at all this game. Do you find yourself? Yeah, not at all.
It's a game by game. I went, I think, 3 or 4 games in a row without throwing one, and then there might come a time where it's necessary for that game or whatever. It's kind of week by
Chase it
week.
down.
So
Sure. Because I mean, this is the perfect moment for it, right? You have it set up where you have everything aligned, outside corner and kind of up, at a certain speed now that he's timed for.
yes, but he is out on his front foot on that fastball, so he might be trying to cover that type of movement
Very
profile
fair.
or have he's a guy who's pretty handsy. He's been playing in this league for a long time as well.
Mhm.
He's had success against me, I think the year prior in San Diego. So gotta remember what players have done and what they're capable of doing.
And also, of course, to bring it back to what we were saying at the top of this, play to your strengths. Change up something maybe here, maybe there, maybe no. So
Sure.
I would think then curveball to fall underneath it. The tunnel that you established. I'm curious
And
what you
barehanded.
you,
Listen,
give.
nothing wrong with that.
It's a 92 mile per hour fastball. Misses up
Standing
and
his
away. So
ground,
now you're going back inside.
grabbing that
Yes,
ball.
there it is. Good.
So into the
I was
right
wondering if you were
side,
going to surprise
scooped
him
by
inside or
Lau,
not.
and the throw to first.
Cutter gets it easy. That's so easy. You set him up the entire time away, and then you just throw the cutter inside. Like, fine. You know what? I'm just done with the set bat. I'll just throw this cutter inside. No problem. That's an interesting swing. You have no idea what that is, do you?
That's
It's
probably a
85.
bad cutter.
It's the 85 mystery.
Don't know.
To see a guy swing at that, though, right? Because that's really out of the zone up. I mean, it lands above the zone at 85 as a cutter. Four-seamer would be even higher than that, right? So how do you react to that as a pitcher?
I'm knowing that I didn't necessarily execute a pitch, but I got away with it, and I'm seeing a guy in swing mode, so I'm trying to take advantage of that. At this point, there's no point in throwing anything within a whole ball inside that zone. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to expand and see what I can get away with.
So let's see how you do that. At 0-1, I would think sinker inside. Oh, you get front
It's in
door
there.
cutter. Steals at the top of the zone, so now it's 0-2. And you're trying to actually... Oh, this is interesting. So the front door cutter, which you don't normally do, I don't think, against right-handers. Sometimes maybe? I haven't seen it
It's
all
in
this
there.
game. It's in there.
It's rare, but it's in there.
And then after seeing him be passive on that one, you tried to sneak a sinker outside coming back. It missed at 93, or was that the four seam that you're trying to elevate just away instead of inside?
Probably two seam and just
Mhm.
didn't catch the seam properly.
So at 1-2, you have to throw a curveball, no? Slider 81. I love it.
Just
I think that's a great call. I think you have a really good slider. I don't know. I'm excited to see that come into fruition, or not come to fruition, but develop a little bit more so next year, especially against right-handers. I think that to mess around with that in your cutter is just an extension of that cutter almost.
Sure.
a little
And especially with
by
velocities.
Aaron
Oh man,
Civale
I'm excited
since
for you. I don't know. You have so
joining
many
the
fun
Rays.
tools now. There's a curveball middle of the
Over up.
zone 20. Sorry, at
Keeping the ball
2-2.
in.
He found so this is
By
an interesting
Aaron
conversation
Civale
I've actually had
since
with a couple people.
joining the
At
Rays.
2-2 here. This cutter, this curveball at 77, down the middle, which is actually very similar to the home run at 2-2. It's off the end of the bat. And I've seen people consider this as, okay, I can't really throw that because he's going to foul it off and waste it. I see this as you made a mistake with it, and he barely survived.
Sure.
And I would be encouraged to throw this again, just knowing that I'm not going to throw the same exact one.
Yeah.
What is your mentality from this?
You could take some off of that, knowing that they just got the end of the bat. They were early in their timing. So you know that, I mean, you could do multiple things. They could have read it as a slider and been on time for 81, but it ended up going down instead of away. But try not to overcomplicate things. Just know that in that moment, he was ahead, but he was able to sit back enough to make contact.
So when you see that, what's your instinct to throw next
Roller up.
pitch?
Keeping the
I'm not in compete baseball mode right now, so I'm just watching this the same as you are. Try to save that for the 6-7 months that I have to be locked in every fifth day.
Fair enough.
ball in
I
the
get
yard,
it.
and that's
So
always gonna
2-2
go well
coming.
for a pitcher.
You go the fastball,
But
trying to go
again,
inside with the
Montero
sinker.
pops
Sorry,
him
with the
up
two-seamer
foul.
at 93. I think that was the
Or a
two-seamer
run
trying
or
to do
two.
that.
That's not real easy to do.
And he fouls it back, which
And
means
a
that he's
couple
timed
of
for that, and
minutes,
you
he
throw the
gets the
curveball at
strike.
76 down, which I love. I think beautiful pitch. It's exactly.
Count of
I mean,
Montero.
that's your bread and
him,
butter.
it's
Is the
Really starting to come
curveball
around here as
to get
right.
whips under the zone like that, especially when you set up.
There's,
Fastball's above
His
it.
thumb stays
Couple
good
tucked under
sliders
that
here.
baseball. It's not there to apply any drag.
You get
Loves
1-1 on Doyle after throwing a first pitch curveball for a strike once again. And another curveball. I mean, this curveball, you're feeling this completely at this point.
At the
This entire game.
Probably my best slider comes right here.
So
The
1-2.
They're having
Let's see
hard
it.
time staying back on that pitch.
Oh my gosh.
So he just
That's
keeps
so good.
going.
That was pretty close.
I mean, that was as sweepy of a slider as I've seen from you.
So Tampa has the metrics up on the board. Whether they're totally accurate or not, I know some guys think that their numbers might be a little bit bumped up there, but I'm pretty sure that was close to 20 horizontal on that one. I do remember throwing it, and I was like, oh, that one felt different. And then I looked, and I was like, oh, okay.
And how are you gripping that sweeper grip?
It's a standard slider as far as I'm concerned, just on this horseshoe here.
Yeah,
trying to get the ball to come off.
Tampa Bay legend Chaz Rowe was essentially throwing the sweeper beforehand, before it became an actual term. And he was someone that was very much about doubling up his index and his middle finger for that, right? And really like pushing down as hard as he could, which I always found so interesting. I mean, I threw a very basic, just keep the stiff wrist, go over. But I always loved that idea of it. Just make sure you're not throwing it too horizontal because we want your elbow to be fine. But all right, so 2-2 here. It looks like you're going back inside after doing the away sweeper.
Upstairs.
Got lost out of your hand. It happens. A 3-2. This is, I think, your first 3-2 pitch. Is that right? This is your first full count.
I think so.
What is your thought on a 3-2 pitch? Because I see a lot of pitchers who feel, oh man, I have to throw a strike, thus I need to throw a fastball at this point. And we're seeing that there's a lot of success with pitchers throwing a secondary pitch in the first 3-2 because batters will jump out of their shoes thinking that it's a fastball. What is your mentality with a full count?
So a guy like this, Doyle is one of the fastest guys in the league, so you want to keep him off the base from a free pass, especially 2 outs, 1-1 game, 5th inning. Lineup's about to turn over. So I don't want to give anything away. So if it's going to be a walk, it better be within half a ball of the zone, and him making a good no swing decision versus me just giving him the base. And I just got to know the hitter that I'm throwing to. I got to know what I've done, and I'm just trying to. A lot of hitters have, like you said early and before we even started all this, there's tendencies. There's 0-0 swing tendencies. There's 2-strike swing tendencies. There's 3-2 swing tendencies. I got to factor all that into the equation.
Sure. And which pitch would you say inside of your arsenal is the pitch that, okay, I need to get a strike right now? This is the one I throw.
Most comfortable strike throwing pitch, probably cutter, but I don't think any of them are too far behind that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Swinging and
You go with the slider
the strikeout.
at 3-2.
The look.
And you get a
Clean.
strikeout on this. That's pretty cool. Especially when you're saying like, hey, I don't want to get him in on base. And I would say the slider is your least consistent of all the pitches that you have today.
Sure. Yeah, it's depends on that day, like I've mentioned before. So sometimes it's game by game.
That's awesome. Oh my God, that makes me so happy. I want to see that one more time.
The look.
I mean, when you're throwing this pitch,
The look.
are you target? Okay, I'll frame it this way. A lot of guys love to throw to a target, and some guys love to throw away from the target. That is, you want the target to be where the pitch lands or where you are going to start the pitch.
So I use the catcher's shoulders kind of as a pillar for my start target. The height of the body is kind of the height of the pitch, which is different guy by guy. I try and work with the catchers, and a lot of them are really good about working that towards me because that might not be conducive of their normal catching style, and it's great when they're able to make adjustments to help me. But I like to use the catcher's body just kind of as a pillar where I'm starting my ball.
Makes sense. And when you're throwing that slider, especially in that 3-2 count, is there a certain, I don't know, place that you're going to aim initially for that? Like, is that okay, instead of a normal slider, which most of them are away off the plate, this is one that you want in the zone. Are you thinking kind of front shoulder of the hitter at that point?
Not that far. I just know that the one I threw before took off on me, so it's more, let me start this middle of the zone, and if it's going to take off, it's going to be just out. If not, it'll at least drop enough to be bottom of the zone.
Sounds good. All right. So 6th inning now. You have Blackman up 3rd time. Easy. Backdoor cutter for strike. Of course. No problem.
Keep pushing.
And then you follow it up with 90 in the zone. I'm assuming that's a 4-seamer.
Yep.
Okay. So obviously that's a little bit lower velocity than we saw early on. We saw maybe 93 or so. I'm going to take that as, I mean, this is the 6th inning now. That was your 75th pitch. Do you mentally know that that's happening? And if it does, because it's going to, how do you adjust as you get a little bit more fatigued on the mound?
I know the variance is going to be 3 plus 1.5, I would say, both sides. So as long as it's within reason and I know what just came in, and I know the result based on what I threw, then I kind of know where I'm at with everything else.
Sure.
And it could just be that one pitch. The next one could be back to where it was. But I do monitor where I'm at just to know, based on what I've done in the past, here's how my pitches play at certain speeds.
Yeah,
so
great.
Now I might have to be a little bit more precise, or I might have to avoid this part of the zone at this speed, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that was my follow-up, was to say, like, okay, I'm at 89, 90 with my 4-seamer now. Now I'm not able to actually do the same stuff that we did before. So let's shift to it. I think that's great. 0-2 here. You go 91 up and away with that fastball, which then sets up either the curveball or the cutter. Cutter inside.
And that ball got him.
See, that's not even that bad of a pitch, too.
Little elbow stick out there.
I mean, what's interesting is there is a theory about this where because he's so far away on it, this pitch that would normally work, right, would the cutter that comes inside off the plate isn't as effective because you're standing him up, right? He's not as inclined to swing on that inside edge in that situation in the first place because he already has a slightly distorted view of the plate because he's been setting up away. The other side of it is, of course, well, then he's like, oh no, the inside corner, I have to swing, and then he just ruins himself. This is always the worst. I hate this because he sticks out this elbow, doesn't he?
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah, he does enough. He turns it in the right way. It's annoying. And it always feels worse when you're feeling so good about yourself, right? It's like, come on, man, just you should be out now. Stop this.
This is my last at bat, and this is pretty what he's able to, how the ball he's able to get to here is crazy.
So this is your 78th pitch of the bat. It's the top of the sixth. It's a 2-1 game. Man on first. And 85 cutter. It's the front door one. I don't think this is your intended front door. This is supposed to be the up and away cutter that you like.
Foul back.
And then at 0-1, you see that he's ahead of that. I would imagine you're going to stay off speed here. Oh, that's beautiful. That's the slider I'm talking about. Oh my God. I want to see that all the time next year, Civale. Oh my, that's perfect. You're talking about Tovar as well as someone who took the curveball for a ride at 1-2 before. Perfect spot for it. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. So like you go back to it, right? I mean, he's just been showcasing this
even further.
So 0-2 here. Yeah, how does he get that? I have no idea.
Right, could be trouble.
Yeah.
That's
oh
gonna
my gosh,
fall for a base hit.
That's just not fair.
That's
a perfect 0-2. Just one more time for everybody. This is an 0-2 pitch that is a slider that is, I mean, down away, essentially in the other batter's box. I don't know how Tovar got this. Maybe Baez got on the phone with him and talked to him. I don't get it. And for that to be your last pitch of the game is just not fair. That should be a strikeout. Do you feel, I mean, you're at 80 pitches here. Do you feel that, oh man, come on. I know it's a 2-1 game. I know first and second, nobody out, but give me another at bat to try and get out of this.
Yeah, I'm always going to want to be on the mound, but those decisions are not mine. I think it's going up to McMahon after this, maybe third time through the lineup. He's much better. I don't know all those numbers. I'm out there doing what I can until the ball's taken out of my hand, and it's always going to be that way. I think every pitcher, I don't think there's any pitcher that'll tell you they don't want to be out there. So, and at the end of the day, the guys that come in behind me, they're really, really good, and I'll hand that ball over gladly.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the guys
That's
coming
a
in
fantastic
behind
mentality. Aaron, that is your game against the Rockies. I cannot thank you enough for breaking it down with us and really taking the time to understand more about what's going on the mound. It's not just as simple as the results or just velocities or whatever. There's so much that goes into this. I really can't thank you enough for joining us today and spending your time with us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me again. It's fun to go back and break it down.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today on Playback.tv/pitcherlist. On behalf of Aaron Civale, my name is Nick Pollock, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.